Most gym injuries don't announce themselves. No snapped ligaments. No ambulance. Just a slow burn that turns into chronic pain 3 months later. And nobody connects the dots. This video exposes 16 gym exercises that hurt the most people without them knowing. Not because the movements are inherently evil, but because of how lifters actually perform them under fatigue, ego, and repetition. We're talking shoulder impingement masked as muscle soreness, knee shear disguised as good burn, and spinal loading that feels fine until it doesn't. This isn't fear-mongering. This is pattern recognition. Quick disclaimer. This is educational content, not medical advice. If you're dealing with pain, see a professional. But if you want to understand why certain exercises quietly collect joint debt while your muscles feel fine, keep watching. These are the lifting mistakes that build damage one rep at a time. Number 1, behind the neck lat pull down. The bar path behind your head forces a choice. Either jet your chin forward to clear the bar or shrug your shoulders up to make space. Most people do both. That forward head posture cranks neck strain. The shoulder position combines abduction and external rotation while your scapula is pinned to the seat. Your body compensates by recruiting everything except what you're trying to train. Meanwhile, the exercise offers almost no advantage over a standard front pull down for lat development, but adds a laundry list of joint requirements most people don't have. If your neck has to move so the bar can pass, that's your warning light. The mirror might not show the damage, but your cervical spine is keeping a ledger. Number 2, upright rows, barbell, or easy bar. Upright rows became popular because they hit delts and traps fast, the exact muscle combo that looks good in a t-shirt. But the biomechanics tell a different story. Pulling high with elbows above shoulder height often forces internal rotation while the shoulder is elevated and abducted, a geometry that increases subacromial impingement risk in susceptible lifters. Add a close grip and aggressive bar path, and you're asking the rotator cuff to work overtime in a compromised position. The exercise survives because the pump feels productive and the movement looks tough. If you feel a pinch at the top, don't argue with it. Your shoulder is telling you the geometry is off. That pinch isn't weakness. It's your joint refusing bad math. Number 3, heavy skullcrushers. Skullcrushers load the elbow joint hard in deep flexion under sustained tension. For weeks, maybe months, it feels fine. Your triceps grow, the weight goes up, everything seems on track. Then one day your elbows start talking back. The issue is tendon adaptation lag. Muscles respond to training faster than connective tissue, and the elbow joint becomes a weak link when lifters chase max-style loads instead of hypertrophy-focused control. Bar path drifting behind the head. Elbows flaring out, momentum at the bottom. All of it amplifies joint stress while the triceps stay relatively happy. If the limiting factor is joint pain, not triceps fatigue, you're not training triceps. You're collecting tendon debt. And that debt comes with interest. Number 4, good mornings loaded. Good mornings are respected in strength sports precisely because they're brutally effective at building posterior chain strength. That same effectiveness punishes sloppy execution. It's a hip hinge with a barbell on your back, which means spinal loading is non-negotiable. When technique slips, lumbar rounding, poor bracing, excessive depth without hinge control, the lumbar spine takes compression and shear forces it wasn't meant to handle. Fatigue makes everything worse because it degrades the bracing and postural control that keeps the movement safe. People treat this like a max effort lift when it's really an assistance movement that demands respect. If the hinge turns into a back bend, it stopped being posterior chain training. Your erectors might feel worked, but your spine just worked overtime in the wrong direction. Number 5, Smith machine squats. The Smith machine removes balance demands, which lets people lift more weight. That sounds like an advantage until you realize the fixed bar path can lock you into a movement groove that doesn't match your individual joint mechanics. If foot position isn't dialed perfectly, your body compensates. Knee travel that doesn't align with your ankle, trunk angle that loads your low back unevenly, hip mechanics that feel off, but not painful enough to stop. The machine feels stable, so people assume it's safe and load aggressively. The reality: altered bar paths change muscle recruitment and joint stress compared to free squats. If it feels stable but your knees feel weird, the machine isn't protecting you. It's trapping you in a pattern your joints are tolerating, not thriving in. Number 6. Leg press with deep lock knees. The real danger here isn't full range of motion. It's slamming into knee lockout or hyperextension under massive load while using momentum to rebound out of bottom. When you treat lockout as a rest point between reps, you're asking passive structures, ligaments, joint capsule, to absorb forces that muscles should be controlling. Case reports in sports medicine explicitly note injury risk reduction by avoiding locking and hyperextension during leg presses. The exercise itself isn't the villain. The execution pattern is. Heavy load plus high velocity plus joint end range equals a recipe for cumulative capsule stress that doesn't announce itself loudly at first. Lockout should be a controlled finish, not a crash land. Your knees don't bounce back from structural damage the way muscles recover from fatigue. Number 7. Heavy partial deadlifts. Partial deadlifts, rack pulls, blocks, pins, allow heavier loading than full range pulls because the range is shorter. That's the feature and the problem. The reduced ROM tempts ego loading, and suddenly you're moving weights that amplify spinal compression and shear demands beyond what your technique can actually control. The bar moves 2 inches. Your spine moves a foot. Straps let you hold more than your grip would allow, which removes one of the body's natural limiting factors. The result is often a shruggy, jerky spinal extension contest instead of controlled posterior chain movement. Partial range can be useful, but it's also the easiest place to hide poor control because the rep is short and dramatic. If the bar moves 2 inches and your spine moves a foot, the wrong thing is working. Number 8. Kipping pull UPS. In non-gymnast populations, kipping isn't bad. It's a sports skill, a gymnastics technique designed for efficiency in competition. The problem is treating a skill as a casual back exercise without the shoulder preparation and scapular control that gymnasts spend years developing. Kipping uses momentum to cycle reps, which increases forces and changes shoulder dynamics compared to strict pull-ups. Research quantifies the altered scapular kinematics and external forces across pull-up variation, with clear injury implications when volume outpaces capacity. Many lifters let the shoulder hang aggressively at the bottom, losing active control in the exact position where the joint is most vulnerable. If you can't strict pull-ups smoothly, momentum reps are borrowing strength from your joints. Gymnasts earn the right to kip. Most gym goers are just flinging their shoulders into overtime. Number 9. Dips with excessive forward lean. Dips feel like a pure chest and triceps movement, but they're also a shoulder position test, and many people fail that test quietly. Deep shoulder extension plus load can stress anterior shoulder structures in lifters without the mobility and control to keep the joint centered. Going too deep, shoulders rolling forward, adding weight plates while the bottom position feels more like a stretch than a contraction. These are the patterns that turn dips into a slow burn shoulder problem. The sensation of opening up the chest at the bottom can be emotionally satisfying, but if the stretch moves to the front of the shoulder joint instead of the pec, you've changed the target from muscle to tendons. If the bottom feels like a shoulder stretch more than a chest contraction, you're hanging on the front of the joint, and joints don't grow from stretch. They just accumulate damage. Number 10. Seated machine twists. The spine is built for rotation, but not for heavy rotation under compressive load with minimal hip and thoracic contribution. Seated machine twist pin the pelvis and load spinal rotation, often past the range your body controls naturally. Finite element and biomechanics research shows lumbar disc and facet stress increases with axial rotation, especially when combined with flexion or force range. What makes this exercise insidious is the feeling of productivity. You're moving weight. You feel your obliques. The machine guides emotion. But the hips stay locked and the machine pins your pelvis while you twist. Your lumbar spine becomes a primary rotation source. If your low back feels it more than your obliques, you're rotating from the wrong place. Core training shouldn't make your spine the shock absorber. Number 11. Heavy shrugs with arm rotation. Shrugs are supposed to be simple. Elevate the scapula, lower it, repeat. But gym culture turned it into rolling shrugs. Up, back, down, forward in a loaded circle. That rotation pattern introduces neck and shoulder mechanics that have nothing to do with trap development and everything to do with grinding your cervical spine and shoulder complex under unnecessary load. Heavy weight plus rolling motion plus forward head posture equals a messy joint movement where the neck becomes a hinge. Literature on cervical and shoulder mechanics links altered scapular control and posture to neck and shoulder symptoms. Exactly the pattern this exercise creates. Shrugs are up and down. When they become circles, your neck becomes a hinge. If you want bigger traps, load the elevation. If you want joint irritation, add rotation. Number 12, leg extensions with max load. Leg extensions are controversial not because they're inherently evil, but because gym culture treats them like a max effort compound lift. Open chain knee extension increases anterior shear forces and ACL strain at certain knee angles. This is documented in joint biomechanics research. The exercise can be used intelligently in rehab and hypertrophy contexts with controlled loads. The problem? People max the stack, kick fast, lock out hard, and turn it into ego lift leg day theater. When you load leg extensions like a squat, you're creating shear forces the knee wasn't designed to handle in isolation. If the machine makes your knees feel sharp or unstable, slow down. Shear doesn't announce itself loudly at first. It just builds quietly until the joint starts refusing to cooperate. Number 13, behind the neck overhead press. Pressing a barbell behind your neck demands shoulder mobility and scapular control most people simply don't have. The compensations are predictable. Forward head posture to clear the bar path, rib flare to buy range, and altered shoulder mechanics that increase impingement risk. It's a classic old-school movement that looks hardcore in the mirror, which is exactly why people keep it. Even when their shoulders are quietly voting no. Shoulder elevation biomechanics emphasize that scapular motion and humeral head positioning matter during pressing. When those mechanics break down, the exercise stops training delts and starts stressing capsules. If you need to lean your head out of the way, you're not pressing overhead. You're negotiating with your joints. And joints don't compromise. They just collect damage and weight. Number 14, heavy cable flies, deep stretch. Deep stretch under load can be phenomenal for hypertrophy when executed with control and stable shoulder position. But when lifters chase that growth stretch feeling with ego weight, shoulders dump forward, ribs flare, and the exercise shifts from pec tension to anterior shoulder and biceps tendon stress. That stretch sensation is emotionally addictive because it feels productive, like growth happening in real time. Clinical literature on shoulder pain in strength athletes discusses how certain exercises predispose to issues and suggests modifications based on shoulder position and load management. If the stretch moves to the front of the shoulder instead of staying in the chest, you just change the target from muscle to tendons. Stretch should create tension in muscle tissue, not joint structures. Your body knows the difference. Listen to it. Number 15, sit UPS with anchored feet. Anchoring your feet during sit-ups increases hip flexor activation and drives higher lumbar spine, loading during the dynamic flexion. Classic biomechanical work on sit-ups shows high compressive loading on the low back during these maneuvers, exactly what you're trying to avoid in core training. The movement persists because it's simple, measurable, and feels hard. Those three traits make it emotionally satisfying even when it's biomechanically questionable. When done with speed and high reps, sit-ups become a hip flexor and spine repetition contest rather than an abdominal strength builder. If your hip flexors burn more than your abs, your core work just became a spine workload. Real core training should challenge your ability to resist motion, not generate repetitive spinal flexion under fatigue. The six-pack you're chasing shouldn't come with chronic low back tension. Number 16, calf raises bouncing at the bottom. The Achilles tendon is incredibly strong. It's also incredibly unforgiving when you surprise it with sloppy, high-volume ballistic loading. Bouncing at the bottom of calf raises turns a controlled strength exercise into a plyometric event. That repeated stretch-shortening cycle under load generates very high Achilles tendon forces. Magnitudes documented in rehab and clinical context during jumping and hopping tasks. Tendons can experience cycle-dependent fatigue, And when you're rebounding off the bottom like a pogo stick under heavy weight, you're creating tendon stress that accumulates faster than the tissue adapts. The Achilles hates surprise spikes in volume and velocity more than it hates honest, controlled strength work. If your reps look like hops, your Achilles is doing plyometrics whether you meant to or not. And tendons don't forgive ignorance. These 16 exercises aren't on a banned list. They're on a caution list. The real story isn't the movements themselves. It's the gap between how people perform them and what their joints can actually tolerate. Awareness beats fear. When you understand why an exercise commonly causes problems, you can make informed decisions about whether to modify it, replace it, or respect it with better execution. The gym doesn't owe you safety. It offers tools. How you use those tools determines whether you build strength or collect joint debt. If this video made you rethink even one exercise in your routine, it did its job. Drop a comment with a movement that surprised you most. And if you found this valuable, share it, because someone in your gym is quietly hurting without knowing why.